A warm welcome from my side, and already thanks a lot for your interest into today's topic, today's webinar with Datavault Builder and Veezoo on sales analytics. Let's just start with a quick round of introduction. My name is Beat Banwart. I'm product manager at 2150 Datavault Builder. I am with the company now for almost 7 years. In my function, coming in touch with customers as well, partners, bringing in their feedback also into our continuous improvement of the application, and thereby, of course, also seeing many things which are happening as well on client sides with the challenges and which are involved with doing good data analytics. And with me here today is Till Hauck. Maybe you want to quickly introduce yourself.
Thank you, Beat. Yeah, so my name is Till. I'm one of the founders of Veezoo. I myself have a tech background. Maybe quickly about the company Veezoo itself. We're a self-service analytics company founded 7 years ago, and we have our headquarters here in Zurich. And our mission, just quickly, is to empower non-technical users to take more fact-based decisions. And how this actually looks like and what this means, you will see later in the webinar.
Yeah, so thanks for that intro. So how is today's webinar structured? We're going to have a quick look on the topic itself, sales analytics and self-service BI. And then we're going to have a quick demo on what Datavault Builder is doing, followed up by Veezoo. And in the end, of course, we are also going to have some time to answer some questions. So please feel free to also raise those questions along the way, but we will be answering them, or as many as fit into the Q&A part in the end of the session. So what is the challenge when doing data analytics? And one of the main challenges is, well, there's different criteria which you have to fulfill to really deliver a good data analytic. You first of all need to make sure that you have a complete picture of the data. So for that, you need to get the data from multiple sources, but you don't just need to get the data from multiple sources. You also need to somehow integrate it so you don't have data silos. So you need to integrate the data from these sources. And you need to be doing this in a regular pace. So you need to update the data also over time, make sure that you get the data as soon as possible so that you can also make decisions in the end on the latest state of the data available. But on the other hand, you also need to make sure that what you're analyzing is actually also of good quality, meaning it is accurate. There is no false data in it, because otherwise also your analysis will just produce wrong outputs. And of course, you need to be able to trust the data which you're working with. So you need to be able to have a reliable data set, a reliable process to cleanse the data. And also in case that some reports change over time, for instance, or some analyst output changes over time, that you are able to answer questions on why did it change. So you need to include some kind of history around your data set, which you're integrating. And now to make it even worse, you need to do this faster and over time with more sources coming in, while at the same time keeping the stability of what you have already produced in the past. So this is really why companies in the end struggle to integrate data in time and in a good quality. So how do we get then instant answers if this process is so complex? Well, it's done by enabling business users to self-service BI. So to get this data themselves and do the analysis on the data set themselves. So if we compare this to a gas station, well, you have probably experienced this yourself. If you have a serviced gas station, you don't have to know anything about how it works, how you actually have to handle it, but the expert is taking care of it. But this is, of course, not really scaling up and really efficient if many people are needed to actually fuel up your car. So instead, gas stations went over to self-service. So meaning you can just do it yourself, you're faster doing it, it's cheaper because you don't have to pay a person, it's available all around the clock, and they get exactly what they want. Now, the challenge a bit is, now, if you're a non-experienced car owner, you might be mixing different fuels, you pick just the wrong fuel. Yeah, you make a mess when fueling up your car, or even making use of violence to make things fit. And in the area of data processing, this can be seen as the load script chainsaw massacre, where you have just scripts growing and growing over time. So meaning historically grown load scripts, or also in the Excel terminology, if you have just VLOOKUPs everywhere to actually make sense and combine the data somehow. So to build a proper gas station in the area of self-service PI and data analytics, what you have to do is you need to be able to connect to different sources, to integrate the data, to conform the data from multiple sources, provide functionality to cleanse the data, apply business rules on top of it, selecting the fields which you want to output and the objects you want to output and analyze. You need to normalize or denormalize actually the data for your target application, and so on, to then in the end finally be able to have an integrated data set which you can visualize and analyze. And that's a whole lot of different functionalities for a simple gas station, which would make it just over complex. So instead of just providing one single gas station, you can split up this process into multiple specialized steps. So coming back to the fuel and the gas industry, you can look at the data warehouse where you process, integrate the data as the data warehouse core, as the refinery. Then the gas station is actually just the interface, so the cleansed data prepared already in a model which can be queried easily for a report. And then we come in on top of this already ready to serve data set with self-service BI on top of it, which can analyze the produced output to really, in the end, run your company. So speaking of complexity, why, besides all the functionalities, is this process of integrating data so complex? And there is basically two different drivers of the complexity. One of it is the number of sources involved. And the second one, if the history of your data is relevant or not. So let's see, even if you just have one source, how this can shift to more sources very quickly, where it can get more complex and where you need to separate the data integration process into multiple specialized components. So even if you just have one source system starting out and you're doing analysis based on this one source, very quickly, you just add a mailing list. Potentially, you'll just use some product mapping, Excels, but okay, it's just some mappings. Then you maintain some different lookup tables or some master data on SharePoint, which you also want to combine again with your actual source. And then you end up also having suppliers, which you need to integrate. And thereby, step by step, you get more and more sources which need to be combined. And even though you just had one source in the beginning, very quickly it evolved over time and you got more sources. On the other hand, even if history is not relevant as you see it as of today, it might drive you very quickly into a direction where history is getting very relevant. And the drivers for history relevance are either legal requirements if you are in a sector where you're obliged to provide a full audit trail of how you process the data and what output was based on what kind of data set at a certain point in time. Or if you just want to do certain calculations, so such as customer lifetime value over time, then you need to get a full picture of how the data evolved over time. Or show me the revenues of a ledger hierarchy of last year. So that's every time where you have, for the full picture, to actually include the historical records. Or, and that's a use case which actually should not happen, is when someone just deletes data in the source and doesn't notify you, and it just disappears from your data set. You need to be able to provide that information somehow, that at a certain point in time, you had this data and you produced a certain analysis on top of it, but now it's gone because it's deleted in the source. And that's very relevant. So show me when things were deleted. So for a complete self-service BI setup, this means you need to build up these different components to actually empower this gas station to distill the data, empower the gas station, and then enable the self-service BI on top of an integrated data set, so that actually business users can make their analysis and run your company. And that's where Datavault Builder as an automation and Veezoo for the reporting and analytical part comes in. And that's also why these two components play very well together. And that's also what we're going to see now in the following two parts, where we show now first the side of Datavault Builder, and then also how we hand this over to Veezoo for the analytical part. But first off, Datavault Builder. So as I mentioned, Datavault Builder is an automation solution for data processing, data integration. So the part about the core warehouse and creating the gas station, the dimension model, and preparing the data for then the further analytics. We provide a very simple interface to create the data model, but not just the data model, to also create then the data flows to integrate multiple sources. And we don't just create this theoretically, but actually we convert the code from the design automatically into working code in real time so that we can process the data immediately. And we also cover the full process around the development, so the support process for spinning up environments and also automating the loading processes. So if you look at the different components which are required basically or involved into such a process for data integration and running a data warehouse, it's not just about the model creation and the code generation, which we are doing, but it's also about setting up multiple environments, propagating changes over time from one environment to another one, to have a stable, productive environment, and to then also automate the loading processes. We have a built-in operations module to automate the reload of data, and an integrated scheduler, so also the trigger the load jobs from time to time automatically to, in the end, assure a high availability setup for your gas station, for your data warehouse. That's in the end replacing many things. So if you start out with developing such a data integration flow, otherwise you would have so many different tools involved, from a data modeling to an ELT tool to actually move your data, taking care of historization. You need an orchestration and scheduling tool. You need to somehow document what you're doing. You need to deploy the changes of what you are doing from one environment to another one, and make sure that this is done also in a reviewable manner so that you have code versioning in place and so on. So that's all tools which in the end are integrated in one tool in Datavault Builder, which then speeds up the development cycles, which then speeds up not only the time to market, so delivering new insights more quickly, but it also increases the usability of your warehouse. And we have been part of the Data Management Survey 2022 performed by BARC. So you don't have to just believe us, but in this survey, actually, our customers were asked, and we were compared to other integration solutions, where you really got top ranked in many of the categories. So not just the one I already mentioned with the time to market, where we really speed up the processes, but also in the satisfaction overall, innovation power, and of course also price to value, because you get so many different aspects which are just integrated into one solution. So speaking of our customers, let's just pick out one example of the German Railways, Deutsche Bahn, which is actually running a data platform with Datavault Builder for its marketing activities. So what they actually started out with were 2 or 3 sources actually, which they integrated to be able to answer questions such as how much revenue is generated by 1 additional euro, additional marketing spending in a certain area. And that platform actually grew also over time, then producing data products for reporting and AI. Right now producing more than 120 such data products. At the moment, it's more than 45 different sources which are connected. And what they say is they were able to scale the solution up without having to redesign data model. Once they integrated another source, they didn't have to touch what was already working. So what does Datavault cover? Just quickly highlight from source to destination. If we have this refinery in mind, that's our core data warehouse where we integrate the data. So we first get the data from different sources, we connect to these sources, extract the data into our staging, then we integrate it into our core warehouse, into our refinery, before we then process the data and prepare it for the presentation in our data marts, in our gas station. So we now to automatically create data products or flat wide views or 3.5 model or dimensional model to process that data and deliver it into data marts, which can then be used as the foundation for analytical purposes. So that's in theory. Now let's just quickly look at today's use case, because we have prepared a little use case where we actually have a source which we're integrating, processing that data, and then preparing the data for that gas station. And then actually Till is going to take over on how that data can then actually be used in a self-service BI manner from that point in time. So let's just quickly switch into Datavault Builder. And let's pick the proper password. All right. And let's just see what we have prepared so far. So what we actually see here is the data lineage module of Datavault Builder. And if we start on the left-hand side, we see that we have different sources which are delivering data first into our staging area, but then into our core warehouse, into our refinery. And then we are actually combining this data here, for instance, for a product from multiple sources to create an output interface and produce a data set which can then be used for an analytical use case. So if we look at, for instance, the different objects which we have here, we're working with a sample and sales data. So we have just some common objects in here, such as orders, order positions, or order items. Of course, I have customers in here, which are coming from a sales system. And then additionally to these orders with certain products, we have a master data system, which is delivering us product categories. And then as third source, we have a branch network, which is delivering us information on different markets and stores. So this is basically the data set we get from the source, and which is then combined in our vault. Now, if you look at how this looks like in the vault, and I'm just marking the different sources here so we can see the little dots here on the objects. We see that the blue box just represent hubs, which are holding the identifiers of the object. And then we have the arrows, which are the links, so just containing the relations, and the little dots, which are satellites, which are containing attributes. And what we see here is that the red dot, which is highlighted here, it's delivering data from the sales system. And that one is pointing to a certain store. And the store information is not coming from that system, but that's actually then coming from the branch network. But that data is here linked together already now in this core warehouse layer. On the other side, we see that same sample. So here we have actually just the master data, which is delivered for the product categories, and the product, which is then pointing to a certain category, but the master data is actually delivering us the descriptive information about that category. So if we go just one step further back into the stage, we just see the overview of the different source systems we have connected. Here again, the branch network, master data, and sales. Could easily also here add another source to also further then extend our model. And then, as I've said, we are here in the vault layer. So afterwards, after this vault layer, we're then combining the data again and preparing it for the output. So to produce data products or dimensional model. So in this case, what we have here is, for instance, for the order item, we are producing here an order item and just can here in Datavault Builder now say for this order item, what kind of references would we like to output into our interface. The Datavault Builder will automatically translate this then into code, which just allows us to integrate this data and get an integrated data set back, which is then denormalized. And based on this denormalized data, we can then also apply some business rules before we send this then to the presentation layer. Now on the operations part, in the background, we have multiple jobs here just for each source system one, which automate the loading process and refresh process of the data from the sources. So I can either automatically reload the data from time to time, or I can also just say here, I would like to reload it right now. Now the tool will connect to the source, will pull out the data from the source and compare it to what's changed and compare what's changed and update the data in the core layer accordingly, and then also correspondingly update the derived data products which we are serving into our data marts layer. Besides this, Datavault Builder is producing documentation of this process, so which goes also down all the way to columnar level, which allows us to then also share with our business users what kind of objects there are and how they're to relate to one and how the data integration process works. And last but not least, once I've done a change, Datavault Builder has also an integrated module to then bring these changes from this environment actually to another target environment. So I could say, well, I want to deploy certain data integration flows from my sandbox here to the productive system to actually set it live. So that's really from stage all the way then through the core warehouse to the access layer. And in the access layer, we then have an object. Let's say here, I want to see just the content of this object on how we deliver it. So let's say for the order items, the quantity which was ordered, so an aggregation of the quantities. So we can also check if our output interface looks proper. So what we see here, the biggest ones are here, the yogurt and water. So that looks not that wrong. But really that's just for data profiling, but not for reporting purposes. So now we actually pass that data on to the next specialized layer. And that's where then Veezoo comes into play. And we hand over that data to the interface.
Perfect. Thank you, Beat. I can take over now and just mention briefly one or two words about Veezoo itself so that you have the context, and then jump directly in the live demo where we actually connect to this now cleaned single source of truth that we can set up the reporting on top. I think, Beat, you need to pass me the, like, if you stop sharing, I can share the screen. Perfect, thank you. All right, so about Veezoo itself. So Veezoo, as I mentioned in the introduction, it's a self-service analytics solution that is here to really empower the business users and non-technical users to get answers to their data, so that in the normal day-to-day business operations, they can take more fact-based decisions. And the way we envision it, or the way we think is the easiest way to actually realize kind of this vision is through natural language. So Veezoo is all about typing the questions that you have in mind into the system and getting the answers directly as a suitable visualization. We've built the world's most advanced search-based analytics solution, and we have already like various really big clients, among them Fortune 500 companies. And Veezoo led these companies to reduction of requests, like ad hoc requests to central reporting teams. And we can really boast also a lot of daily active users that are using the system and asking a lot of different questions. So for instance, the retail client Valova, we've managed to even increase, thanks to Veezoo, increase the sales at individual outlets by up to 5%. But let me now show you Veezoo and how it actually looks like. So I'm now in the Veezoo studio. This is like the admin interface where you can integrate a new data set. Now Datavault Builder has now created a Postgres, has now outputted the data model that you've seen into a Postgres database. So what we can do here is basically point Veezoo to this database. Let's say this is our retail demo. We want to ask question in English. Let me paste in here the connection details, so that afterwards, basically, we can tell Veezoo which tables we want to ask questions about. So we see the database connection works, and Veezoo now connects to this database, and we are able to select now the tables that are relevant for us, as well as the columns, like those that we want to ask questions about. So here I can just select all of them and basically then click import, which doesn't mean that Veezoo copies the data out, but Veezoo will actually create like a semantic layer on top of this, on top of the database. So in the end, no data is really copied away, and you really use the single source of truth. So Veezoo doesn't create a new data silo. Basically, the next step after you click import is like you enter the Veezoo interface, the end user interface, where you can see how actually now the data is connected also on the Veezoo side. So you see that this is a retail demo, that we have the central object, the orders, which contains line items. So and each of those line items has a product. This could be like yogurt that we've seen before, or mineral water that in turn has like, for instance, a category. We know sometimes from the orders what customer actually placed this order and in what store the order was made, and we even maybe have some public data like population. So we can even ask questions involving such demographic data. So I mentioned Veezoo is all about questions, but how does it actually look like? Down here you see this input box where I can type any question. For instance, I could simply say like, how many organic products did we sell yesterday? So this is like the chat interface of Veezoo, and I immediately get the answer. So Veezoo tells me that we sold 53,000 organic products yesterday, and we even see a distribution over the hour of the day when we sold most. So seems around lunchtime, people come shopping most actually in our stores. Maybe we care actually about how is it split according to category. So like the product category, we can simply ask follow-up questions telling Veezoo, hey, I want to see this answer here by category. So Veezoo will now break it down for me and give me this nice hierarchy where I can see that, well, most organic products we sold were fruits and vegetables. We can even drill down this hierarchy and see that exotic fruits, for instance, were sold really often, relatively speaking. Maybe this by itself doesn't tell us much, so maybe we need to compare it with the previous year. So even just that is simple as just saying like compare with last year. Veezoo actually understands it and knows that you want to now compare the same day, yesterday, but with last year. Exactly. But it's not just Veezoo is not just all about visualization. So you can even get like nice kind of tables out of it. So for instance, we saw that if we open the knowledge graph up again, that there's this information about the population. So we could maybe ask, hey, show me all the stores where the population is smaller than 2,000. So we want to actually wonder where do we have stores in really small places, and I immediately get the list of stores, and there's even this button that says like opening maps. So even if you have geographic information, you can let Veezoo display this on a map. other examples of what you could do. So you can also really get crazy with this. Like if we have a simple question like how did the sales of let's say peanut butter develop this year? And you also see while I type, I get like suggestions. Maybe I only care about the crunchy peanut butter. How did the sales of peanut butter crunchy develop this year? I get a line chart, so like also Veezoo directly picked what it thinks is the best fitting visualization. But maybe now I'm wondering, actually, what's the age distribution of the customers who buy this peanut butter? So this is again as simple as just asking, hey, what's the age distribution customers who buy peanut butter? So there's various ways how you can actually ask those questions, and Veezoo should understand all of those different ways to get in the end to the right answer. So here we see basically on the x-axis the age of the customers, on the y how many customers actually ever had an order where there was a line item which was this peanut butter product. And here it's also obviously always possible like to interact with those filters to take more products in there or to remove products. Now, maybe you actually care about, show me the individual transactions. So with Veezoo, even if you have million or even billions of records, you even can go down on the transaction level. For instance, I can say, show me all orders in Zurich. So I say the city of Zurich with peanut butter, crunchy one, without a jelly line item. So we don't want those that have a jam in there. So maybe because they often go together from customers younger than 30. So this is a really complicated question. So let's see how Veezoo will deal with that. And again, Veezoo replies me here saying that there were 1,129 orders. We can see here the individual order, like in which store it was, what time it was, and even kind of like a description of the whole order, like what else they bought. And in here we also see that that the peanut butter is in there. And we can also see this up here, that the order must be in a store that is in the city of Zurich. The order cannot have a line item with a product that is in the jam category, because I said like without jelly. But at the same time, the same order must have a line item with the product peanut butter crunchy. The order itself comes from a customer whose age is below 30. So there's so many components in there, but Veezoo could handle it and dynamically write SQL query. So for the technical users, you can also take a look at actually the query that Veezoo generates to give you these answers. And as I mentioned, like this follow-up functionality, even here we could say like, hey, if you care actually how many of those orders were per store, it's as simple as just asking, like, how many orders were there per store? So now basically Veezoo will keep the context of what we were asking and paste a new result on top of the existing one. So here we see per store in Zurich, the number of orders. And we could also see this like in this visualization if you prefer. Now, maybe you don't always want to keep asking the questions over and over again if it's something that is interesting for you recurringly. And like saving answers in Veezoo or creating like a dashboard is very simple. You can simply say, let's pick an answer, one of the things we ask, for instance, this one here. I can add this to a dashboard, say my board. So it gets created here on the side. I place this in there. Maybe I also care about kind of this visualization here. I also want to keep tracking this. I add this as well in my board. And if I refresh Veezoo, so if I load Veezoo again, you see here on the side that I have this dashboard that I can basically modify as well, like how I want, change visualization, add more things, rename titles, like the normal operations. And what's really magical about Veezoo is that this whole question answering functionality, this even works on top of those boards. So you don't need to predefine like all the filters that you want to allow, because in Veezoo you can now just say, again, a follow-up on a whole board and say, hey, I just want to see this for the region. Let's pick Are. We want to restrict it maybe also in a different way. Yeah, let's just say for peanut butter as well. So for the region Are for peanut butter products. In this dashboard, what do we see? We see the revenue, number of orders, the average order value, how many orders there were this year, and how they're geographically distributed. And now for the follow-up, it created me this new board where I see the revenue really just for this peanut butter product in a specific region, as we can see here. And as well, like it updated all the KPIs up here, and also this visualization down here. So Veezoo kind of is really flexible, and it also allows you to do like powerful analysis, for instance, like basket analysis. So I prepared here this board where you, for instance, can see like for a specific product, what percentage of orders actually contain this product. If this product was in an order, like what was the average order value? And if the product was ordered, how many items of this specific product were bought, and which other products go really well with it. So I can up here, for instance, and change this to like this mozzarella. I don't care about the coffee machine anymore. I want to see the mozzarella. Veezoo will update you all the answers here automatically. Exactly. So this is a short overview of Veezoo itself. It obviously has a very powerful admin interface as well, where you can configure a lot of the details and make sure that Veezoo really answers all your questions correctly in a very natural way. Moving back to the slides quickly, just to kind of reiterate the points. So Veezoo is really here for the users that currently don't get the answer that they need. This can be for various reasons, because dashboards are limited to predefined questions, so that when you're lacking this flexibility, can be when your data teams are overloaded with a lot of requests, and it takes a lot of time until you would get the answer, or because the traditional BI solutions are just difficult to use, and that's another reason why you don't get the answer. And that's really the problem that Veezoo is solving. So Veezoo is really, it's a simple interface, it's very smart, it's robust and accurate, and it's well integrated on like existing single source of truth, existing high quality data mart. So you don't build with Veezoo a new data silo. Maybe to dig deeper in like one specific customer, Valora, they're a food service and retail company in Switzerland, and they managed to really increase their revenue thanks to Veezoo in individual locations by up to 5%. And the situation there was they were highly impacted by the pandemic and had to get back on track. And the dashboards that they were too static to cover the kind of analysis that were required by the business. And thanks to Veezoo, the sales teams and the marketing teams and the top management had now a tool in hand that could answer their ad hoc questions really in the moment and down to the transactional level, like even during meetings. And as next to the increase in revenue, thanks to better decisions that they took, thanks to the answers that they got from the solution, they also managed to reduce the number of requests that were sent to the controlling team by 87%. So yeah, if you're interested in what we have to offer, let us help you make your company truly data-driven. You can sign up for a demo at veezoo.com/signup, or obviously like reach out to me so that we can have a personal call to find out if this is something that would be interesting for your company. And now I would like to pass back to Beat, I think, for the QA session.
Thanks for that. Thanks a lot for that really good overview. And also, I think we have really well seen how Datavault Builder and Veezoo really go very well hand in hand, because, I mean, the easy query interface which you have and the powerful insights you can gain, they're just as accurate, of course, in the end as the data set which is provided in the background for it. Okay, so any questions? I think we're almost a little bit over time, but we still will take the time to answer a couple of questions. Feel free to raise them into the Q&A board. All right. So question probably, I'm not sure if the question is for Datavault Builder or for Veezoo. How can you install that solution? Maybe Till, you want to answer
Sure.
the Veezoo part, and I'm going to answer the Datavault Builder part.
Perfect. So okay, so installation at Veezoo. There's two ways. Like there's a managed cloud that we offer that you basically can go on our website and create your account and then connect from there to your database. So it can be really as simple as that. Obviously, like for bigger clients, they want to run this in their own private clouds, in their own environment, and for that we offer the possibility to basically to provide the necessary images like Docker image or Kubernetes, so that you can also install it in your own infrastructure.
Yes, and same is true for Datavault Builder regarding the images. So Datavault Builder is also provided as a set of Docker images. So basically you can run and deploy it anywhere where you can also set up Docker images. So this may be in your cloud or also on-prem. I also have an environment running on my local laptop. So really there you're free to choose the environment you like. And regarding the platforms Datavault Builder supports as a target, that's in the demo it was Postgres, which also Veezoo connected them to, but we're also allowed to deploy the database part to Snowflake, to Exasol, Oracle, SQL Server, and what did I miss? Synapse. So there you can also pick between different targets for Datavault Builder. All right, any more questions? Oh, there is one. That one is for you, Till. This is the first time I'm getting to know Veezoo. Is it a graph database that provides more than a typical graph database does?
It's a good question. So Veezoo itself, like we are using a kind of a graph database for our semantic layer for this network that you've seen, this knowledge graph. But in the end, the data that Veezoo queries, it stays in a relational database. So in this example now it was in a Postgres, but it could just as well be a BigQuery. And we use this graph database, this knowledge graph, in order to naturally understand the question. But in the end, Veezoo is kind of like a translation layer that uses that basically translate the English or also German or French question and translates it on the fly, thanks to this kind of graph, this knowledge graph, into a SQL query in the end. So in the end, like Veezoo is really going for relational databases. So in that sense, Veezoo is not a graph database, but Veezoo uses a graph database in order to answer questions.
All right, with that statement, starting to close up today's webinar. So just throwing in the question with all that you have seen, what will be your choice for running sales analytics, process A with a data refinery, and then a self-service layer on top of it, or B with more of a load script chainsaw massacre? Please let us know. It was a pleasure doing today's webinar with you, Till. If you have any questions, or if you would also like to get a demo of Datavault Builder or Veezoo, please feel free to reach out to us. Also, always happy to do a personal demo on request. You see the contact details on the slides, beat.bonwart@datavault-builder.com or till@veezoo.com. Happy to have you here and wish you all a nice day, nice afternoon, or a nice evening.